Hello, I'm MultiPrometheus1, and welcome to my first episode in my series of one-offs. If you saw my last video, you'll know that I said I was going to start doing In Defense Ofs and We Swear We're Not Disney's a little less often, just so I could try out some new things. And this video is the first in my trying out some new things. I'm not done doing In Defense Ofs and We Swear We're Not Disney's. I can tell you that my next In Defense Of will be Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. That movie completely split the Star Wars fan base down the middle. It made a lot of Star Wars fans happy, but it also made a lot of Star Wars fans angry. So it makes more sense to do that as my next In Defense Of rather than A Cure for Wellness, which I said would be my next one a few videos ago. So that is going to be my next In Defense Of. I'm not done doing the In Defense Ofs and We Swear We're Not Disney's. Those are my two main series that I do on this channel, and I'm not done doing those at all. But I just want to try out some new things. I don't want to limit myself. I don't want to get into like a rhythmic pattern where I'm just doing the same thing all the time. I want to try out new things. And that's what this video is going to be the first installment of. Now, when we talk about the big science fiction franchises, we usually go to Star Trek, Star Wars, even though that's fantasy, the Terminator, the Matrix. Jurassic Park technically counts. Firefly's pretty big. You know, we usually go to these things when we think of the big science fiction franchises. Yet there's one science fiction franchise that is actually much bigger and more expansive than a lot of the ones I just mentioned. It's almost, not entirely, but it's definitely bigger than a lot of the ones in terms of how scope and how many installments and everything. And yet, very rarely do people ever talk about it. People usually don't talk about it, and it's almost as if they've never heard of it, which is really weird. And that is the Stargate franchise. Yeah, with 3 movies, 4 TV shows, and a miniseries, with one of those TV shows being one of the longest-running science fiction series of all time, you'd think Stargate would be seen as significant to the world of science fiction, but I never hear anyone talk about it. It's almost as if no one's even heard of it. Which sucks because it's actually my favorite science fiction franchise. I'm only a casual Star Trek fan, and Star Wars is fantasy, so that doesn't really count. My favorite science fiction franchise, the one I love more than any other, is Stargate. And so, since this is a pretty big franchise, and I rarely ever hear it talked about, I'm going to be offering in this video kind of a beginner's guide to the world of Stargate, to the Stargate franchise. I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers, and I'm going to try and keep things simple, so I'm not going to go too much into detail in terms of plots and characters and stuff. I'm just going to give a general overview of the Stargate franchise and all of its different pieces and parts as a beginner's guide to hopefully introduce more people to the franchise. I'm only going to be going over things in the franchise, however, that are film, that are moving pictures. I'm only going over the movies, the TV shows, the miniseries. I know there are books, I know there are comics, I know there are video games. I'm not going over any of those. I'm only going over what is in the official canon and what is a moving picture. So the movies, the TV shows, and the miniseries. That being said, get ready to ascend to a higher plane of nerddom. If you know the franchise, you'll know what that's a reference to. This is the Stargate franchise. It all started in 1994 with the movie Stargate. Directed by Roland Emmerich and starring Kurt Russell and James Spader, the film follows the U.S. Air Force as they discover a strange device buried in the ruins of ancient Egypt. They bring Spader's character on board, Dr. Daniel Jackson, and he's able to determine the device is indeed some sort of teleportation device. He's able to figure out how it works, and when they turn it on, they discover it creates a wormhole which can transport anyone who walks through it to another planet far from Earth. Kurt Russell's character, Colonel Jack O'Neill, puts together a team with Jackson, and they go through the Stargate. On the other side, they find themselves on a planet with a culture resembling ancient Egypt, with a powerful alien being pretending to be the ancient Egyptian god Ra, ruling the planet with an iron fist. Now it's up to O'Neill, Jackson, and their team to liberate the oppressed people of the planet, all while trying to figure out how to get home. If you know who Roland Emmerich is, then you'll know he's not really seen as the best director in the world, and yeah, this movie really isn't the best movie in the world. It's not bad, but it's not great either. It had so much potential that it didn't take advantage of. There are so many things that could have been, but wasn't. I would definitely recommend it as an introduction to the Stargate franchise, Just don't go in expecting a masterpiece. The title of masterpiece is reserved for the second installment in the franchise, Stargate SG1. Serving as a direct sequel to the movie, the TV show Stargate SG1 picks up right where the movie left off and follows O'Neill and Jackson as they discover the Stargate doesn't just go to that one planet from the movie, it goes to thousands of planets all over the universe in a gigantic network of Stargates. As a result, the Air Force puts together a group of teams known as SG units, whose job is to use the Stargate to go to all these planets and explore the galaxy, with O'Neill and Jackson being placed on the flagship team SG1, along with some great new characters. Along the way, they discover Ra wasn't the only alien enslaving planets by pretending to be a god, and there's a whole species hell-bent on controlling the galaxy. Stargate SG-1 is definitely the best installment in the franchise, and it's my favorite TV show of all time. For good reason. The show is a perfect balance of everything. It knows exactly the right time to be serious, and exactly the right time to be humorous. It knows exactly the right time to let each episode stand on its own, and exactly the right time to have big story arcs that last multiple seasons. Combine that with brilliant characters that are casted perfectly, acted perfectly, and developed perfectly, and you get everything you could ever want in a sci-fi show. It lasted 10 seasons, 213 episodes, making it one of the longest-running science fiction shows in history. The first few seasons are a little cheesy, but once it finds its footing, it's a triumph of television that can't be described with words. Watch it and get swept away. With the success of Stargate SG-1 for adults, the studio tried to see if they could pull off the same success with kids, and as a result they created the children's cartoon Stargate Infinity. Oh boy. Stargate Infinity is the only installment in the franchise not considered canon, for good reason. Set 30 years after the movie, it follows a group of futuristic soldiers who are prevented from returning to Earth by a traitor, and now must find another way back home. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys, I've never seen an entire episode of this show. Why? Because every single person I've heard from who's seen it has said it's one of the worst shows they've ever seen in their life. I tried watching one scene from it, but the writing in that one scene alone was so terrible I couldn't finish it. And so, to this day, I still have not seen a full episode of this show. And why should I? It's not canon, everyone says it sucks, and it seems to lack the down-to-earth nature that made SG-1 so great by trying way too hard to make it cool and hit with the kiddies. It's stupid, it misunderstands what Stargate is, and it isn't officially part of the overall storyline. Stargate Infinity is the only installment in the franchise that I can say you can skip. But things are looking up now because during SG-1's 8th season, we got a direct spin-off that went right back to what made Stargate great, and that was Stargate Atlantis. Taking place at the exact same time as SG-1, Stargate Atlantis follows a new team of soldiers, scientists, and explorers who use the recently discovered network of Stargates within the Pegasus galaxy to learn more about where mankind may have originated from and what threats to it may exist beyond the Milky Way. This show isn't quite as good as SG-1, but it's pretty darn close. The characters are just as unique, clever, and interesting, the villains are just as creative, and the storylines are just as captivating. This show only lasted 5 seasons as opposed to SG-1's 10, but don't let that deter you. It's exactly what a spin-off should be. New characters in a new place, with just enough of what made the original great, and just enough new stuff to make it stand on its own. If you like SG-1, then make sure once Season 8 starts, you start watching Atlantis. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and on June 22nd, 2007, Stargate SG-1 aired its final episode. But wait, there were still some story arcs that hadn't been concluded yet, and that's why during Stargate Atlantis' 4th or 5th season, we got 2 direct-to-DVD movies, Stargate The Ark of Truth and Stargate Continuum. There really isn't much I can say about these 2 movies without spoiling major plot points from SG-1, so I'll just say this. They're really good. They're exactly what you would think 2 movies made to wrap up SG-1 would be. But alas, more good things must come to an end because on January 9th, 2009, Stargate Atlantis aired its final episode. But wait, SG-1's done, Atlantis is done, the 2 movies are done, but there's no more Stargate, what are we gonna do? Well, a few months later, we got our first episode for the new Stargate show, Stargate Universe. Let's talk about Stargate Universe. Stargate Universe is the only installment in the franchise in which the fanbase is split entirely down the middle. There are two divisions of Stargate fans, those that like Stargate Universe and those that don't. So here's the story. A new network of Stargates is discovered in an entirely new galaxy, and so a group of individuals, comprised of soldiers, scientists, and civilians, are tasked with exploring it. But, in a surprising turn of events, their off-world base is brutally attacked, and they're forced to use the Stargate to escape. On the other side, they find themselves on a ship, adrift in space with no way of knowing where they are. And because they don't know where they are, they have no way of dialing the Stargate to get back to Earth. And to make matters worse, the ship is in terrible condition, with almost no power, food, or resources. Now it's up to these characters to do whatever they can to survive, while trying to figure out how to get home. I'm going to get my personal feelings on the show over with first. It's okay. It's not the best show in the world, but it's not the worst either. It's okay. Like I said earlier, the fanbase is split down the middle when it comes to this show. Those that like it like to give the defense that it's not bad, it's just different. The other Stargate shows were about exploration. This show, however, is not about exploration, it's about survival. But the people who don't like the show say that's the problem. The reason they love Stargate is because it's about exploration. It's about not knowing what's on the other side of the gate. It's about not knowing what the next adventure has in store. When the theme of the franchise spends 3 movies and 2 TV shows being explore the universe, further the knowledge of mankind, and protect Earth from threats, and then is suddenly changed to just be alive, don't die, it loses a lot of what made it interesting. Plus, it's Battlestar Galactica. When Battlestar Galactica started airing on TV in 2004, it quickly became one of Stargate's biggest competitors. But guess what year Battlestar Galactica just happened to end? 2009, the same exact year Stargate Universe started. That's right, with their main competitor finally gone, the studio decided to use their franchise to fill the void, creating a show that was basically Battlestar Galactica Stargate Edition. Don't believe me? Battlestar Galactica is about a group of people trapped on a ship adrift in space trying to survive. Stargate Universe is about a group of people trapped on a ship adrift in space trying to survive. Battlestar Galactica is a very politics-driven show, with characters spending much of their time debating what policies should be in running the ship. Stargate Universe is a very politics-driven show, with characters spending much of their time debating what policies should be in running the ship. Battlestar Galactica uses a documentary style, with lots of handheld shaky cam and quick editing. Stargate Universe uses a documentary style, with lots of handheld shaky cam and quick editing. Heck, even some of the characters in the show are extremely similar to characters in Battlestar Galactica. My big problem with Stargate Universe is not that it has different themes and messages from the previous installments. It's not that it's too different from the previous installments. My big problem with Stargate Universe is that it's trying way too hard to be Battlestar Galactica. And that's a problem. If I want to watch Battlestar Galactica, I'll watch Battlestar Galactica. If I want to watch Stargate, I'll watch Stargate. Don't try and take Stargate and make it Battlestar Galactica. An original is always worth more than a copy. As its own thing, Stargate Universe is a decent show that is canon to the overall storyline. It isn't the best installment in the franchise, but I would still watch it. After only 2 seasons, Stargate Universe aired its final episode, and for the next 7 years, we had no Stargate. Roland Emmerich tried to reboot the franchise at one point, but that project never got off the ground, and I think that was for the best. But this year, in 2018, we got our first new installment in 7 years, and that is the 10-part miniseries Stargate Origins. Stargate Origins takes place before the original Roland Emmerich movie and focuses on the early aftermath of the Stargate's discovery in Egypt. At the time of writing the script for this video, only the first few episodes of the miniseries are available, so I'm unable to give my opinion of it as a whole. But based on the first few episodes, it really isn't that great. Not only does it look and sound like it had the budget of a paperclip, but the writing isn't great, the acting isn't great, and it actually contradicts previously established canon in multiple ways. However, once again, only the first few episodes have been released at the time I'm writing this. It's very possible the rest of the miniseries will get better, and will introduce plot points that fix the canonical errors. I simply don't have the ability to judge the miniseries as a whole right now. Why don't I just wait a few weeks until the entire miniseries is out and then do this video then? At that point, I will need to start working on The Last Jedi in defense of, and I just won't have the time. I need to get this video out first, and at this point in time, I have not seen the entire miniseries and cannot give my opinions of it as a whole. And that, my friends, was the entire Stargate franchise from 1994 to the present. MGM recently put out a streaming service called Stargate Command. It's basically like a Netflix for Stargate. For a one-time fee of $20, you can stream the entire franchise except Infinity. So that's all 3 movies, SG1, Atlantis, Universe, Origins. You can stream the entire franchise except Infinity, because that's not canon and no one cares, for this one-time fee of $20. That is definitely the cheapest way to go about it, and I definitely do recommend it. It's a great deal, and you're going to get almost complete access to a great franchise. But do it quickly though, because the service ends on April 15th. And if you fall in love with the franchise, and like I and so many other people have, then go on Twitter and use the hashtag StargateNow. This is an official movement by the creators of SG1, Atlantis, and Universe to convince MGM to bring back the franchise for good. Not just in movies and miniseries, but like new TV shows too. So if you enjoy the franchise, go on Twitter, use the hashtag StargateNow, and let's join with the creators of these shows. Make our voices heard. We want more Stargate. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I will see you next time. I'm Prometheus. Bye!